Hebrew scripture reading, Amos chapter 8, verses 4 through 7, pages 1085 and 1086 on the Pew Bibles. Israel is doomed. The Lord said, "You people crush those in need and wipe out the poor. You say to yourselves, how much longer before the end of the new moon festival? When will the Sabbath be over? Our wheat is ready and we want to sell it now. We can't wait to cheat and charge high prices for the grain we sell. We will use dishonest scales and mix dust in the grain. Those who are needy and poor don't have any money. We will make them our slaves for the price of a pair of sandals. I, the Lord, won't forget any of this, though you take great pride in your ancestor Jacob." Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. The prophet Amos does not spare his words. He is not very happy with the way people are treating each other in what was called the northern kingdom. That was Israel. The southern kingdom was Judah. They were cheating each other. And one of the greatest tricks, and some of you may have heard it in modern times, you go to a farmer's market, they have the scales, right? And say you have some wheat. And so what they do is they add a little dirt to it or some kind of an additive to make it weigh more. So you're really being cheated, aren't you? And what was going on is that people tried to be outwardly pious. You know, it was all about outward appearances. You know, I bow a certain amount of times. I offer offerings a certain amount of times. I do all of these outward things, but it's not here in my heart. And that was the real problem. Because in the Hebrew scriptures, over and over and over again, you have all these words of social justice, of how we're supposed to treat each other. They even had things in there about the courts. As you know today, if you have a lot of money, in many cases you can get away with murder, right? It was no different then. And one of the things that is stated in the Old Testament is that every person deserves their fair day in court, no matter what their financial circumstances are. Because obviously, people were really suffering because they didn't have a lot of money. They also knew that some people couldn't afford all the grain and the vegetables and the meat that would be available, that the farmers and the herders had provided. And so they were told that if you are a farmer and you have a bunch of workers in the field, you're to make a straight line, you're to go and pick everything one time only. And there will always be something left. So the poor people, for example, can go through the fields and they get enough food so they can feed themselves and their families. And we have an example of this in the book of Ruth, one of my favorite. I always say a lot of things are my favorites, but anyway, the book of Ruth, I love the book of Ruth, okay? And it tells about them going, Ruth and Naomi, going to the field that had been picked one time only and having the ability to pick another amount of food so that they could feed themselves because they didn't really have money at that particular time in their lives. There are so many things that we see around us. We see a lot of greed, don't we? Yes, we
A lot of people cheat each other. What Amos was saying is that people back then, if they didn't have enough money, they were often made into slaves. So that this is the only way that they could eat. This is the way people treated each other. It isn't new, folks. It isn't anything new, unfortunately. But I have good news. I'm not going to have people leaving here and say, oh, the world has gone to the doggies. But that would be good, actually, I think. And you know, it's just everything's horrible. No, it isn't. There are people that will argue that greed is part of human nature. But you probably in your lives know people that aren't greedy. People that actually sacrifice, not because they have to, but because they want to. I want you to imagine that you're standing on the banks of the Los Angeles River. We've had a real bad rainstorm like we did last year, right? And you're riding your bicycle, and oops, your bicycle, and you go into the river, and you're starting to flow down there. Now, there are some other people that are down there for some reason or other. We don't know why. Who's going to go in and rescue you? Picture some of the presidents we've had in the United States. Who do you think might come in and rescue you and jump in there? Now, if they can't swim, that's a reason. But then if they can't swim, they're not prepared, right? But think of the folks who would jump in and save you, even though it could be very dangerous for their own lives. If you think that way, you'll know who to vote for, right?
Yeah.
Think about it. Who would jump in there? Who's selfless enough, that cares enough? This person doesn't know you, but you're a human being in dire need. And, if we think that way, then we can think about that not everybody is greedy. I like to use Mother Teresa as an example. How many of you know that she came from an extremely wealthy family? And I'm sure her parents had big plans for her. Oh, we're going to get her a nice rich husband. We're going to have all these kids. Like back in those days, people had huge families. And, we're going to be she'll help us continue as the most prominent family around. And what did she do? She said, no, this is not what I want for my life. So what did she do? She went down. She was in India, in one of the worst places you could be, and worked with children that were homeless and orphans. That was her choice. She didn't have to make that choice. She was being selfless. And I think we can think of a lot of other examples of people who have given up wealth, prestige, power, whatever you want to call it, and have devoted their lives to helping other people. I read an interesting article in a publication called The Guardian. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of it.
Yes.
It comes from England. And this fellow was trying to wrestle with the idea, is greed an innate human characteristic? Or are just some people on the greedy side and others aren't? And he came to the conclusion that yes, there are some greedy people, but that as a society, we can make choices to prevent it, that people won't be homeless, hungry, and very ill. And there are societies even today that have made that choice. And it's wonderful that they have chosen to do that. If you've ever been to the Scandinavian countries, it's a lot different there than it is here. A lot different. Much more open, much more loving, more tolerant, less crime. Everybody has health insurance. You don't find a lot of homeless people. You find most people kind of middle income. It's really very nice. But I think it makes a difference that it comes from your heart rather than your head. I can be very rational and say, oh, it's not good to have people running around homeless and things like that, because that's not very caring, and we need to do something about it. Then, you know what? Our God commands us that we look out for each other. And in the Bible, it makes a lot of comments about widows and orphans, because that was a major problem back in those days. They were always at war, constantly. You think people are violent now? Oh, they all hated each other. They were always at war, and you had a lot of widows and orphans. So look out for the widows and orphans. Look out for the people that don't have enough money to buy the food that they need to sustain their lives. Be generous. Be kind. Oh, how do we treat aliens? With respect. Because you were once an alien in the land of Egypt. And you were treated very well, weren't you? So remember that. So when you have some person from a foreign country come to your country,
remember that your family was once in a similar situation. Big difference, isn't it, than what we're seeing today. But see, as a person of faith, you have a commandment from the one that created you that this is the way we're supposed to treat each other. With respect, looking out, not just to yourself, but to the needs of other people. Now, the Bible never told us, whether it's the Old Testament or the New Testament, that we're supposed to starve ourselves and live in rags in order to do this. Everyone should be provided with the needs that we all have. So we're provided with our needs, okay? I do not drive a Mercedes van. I don't know if they make vans, but I don't drive one. I could want one, but I don't drive one. Because if I did, I'd be spending so much more money on my van than I would need to, and I could be helping a lot of people that really need my help. So, I have my Chrysler. It wasn't cheap when I bought it, but it has 195,000 miles on it. And it's still working. So I'm not going to get a new one until it says, I've had enough, I'm tired. But no one is being asked to live in poverty. No one is asked to wear sackcloth and ashes. We are there, have our needs fulfilled, but also to help each other. And luckily, as people of faith, hopefully we know that. And we don't care what some of the big churches that have ministers that fly helicopters and things like that are doing. Oh, really? You know, we can't worry about what other people are doing. That's their problem. They can own it. All we know is what we can do. And if we truly are people of faith, if we are truly people that believe that our faith tradition teaches us to share, then we're going to do it. And what I'm now asking all of you to do is to help us out with food with the Foothill Unity Center. We have been so busy worried about concerts and selling property and doing all these other things that we've kind of forgotten about our neighbors. And our neighbors are important. And as you well know, it's getting more and more expensive to live here in the San Gabriel Valley. And in Monrovia and in Pasadena, we have partnered with the Foothill Unity Center. And we usually have sort of a program that every first Sunday of the month we would bring food. I'm asking you that if you have any canned goods, make sure the dates are okay. Canned goods, non-perishables like rice, beans, spaghetti, whatever, that you bring them and put them in the basket right there in the front. And I'm going to make a personal effort, along with Kathy, to go down to the Foothill Unity Center and to bring the food. Because we are really making a difference by feeding families. A lot of these people are working. Hard to believe, but a lot of them are working. And their rents are so high that you have to choose between putting something over your head and putting something in your stomach. That's how bad it is with a lot of families. I mean, I can't believe that today you have to pay over $1,000 a month for a studio apartment. That's ridiculous. And then what do? They raise the rent every year, like $100 a month. So that's over $1,000 a year, except there's this problem. The employer, or like say you're on SSI, hasn't done likewise. So you have to make these decisions. Do I eat, or do I get to be able to sleep in a safe environment? Now that's really pretty sad. So what I'm asking you, we can't worry about the other people. The other thing that I really feel hopeful about is what some of what I call churches that really want to follow Jesus are doing. In Grand Rapids, Michigan, there was a young woman who had a confirmation class. For those of you who are not familiar with that, that's usually when you're about 13, 14, 15. You go to these classes, and traditionally you learn church doctrine and the history of the church, and and what you're supposed to do in church. Anybody know sign language? Boring, okay? And this is what people usually had to suffer through. They went to confirmation class. And at the end of the confirmation class, and they can choose to join the church. But what the confirmation class that this particular church is doing in Michigan, they have a nice young director, is thinking about how they can be the church, how they can live their faith, rather than just yap, 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 talk about it. So they have a problem there right now. There are a lot of trees that are dying because of some kind of an infestation of some kind of a beetle. And all these trees are dying. And we know that we need a lot of plants in order to sustain this earth. We exhale carbon dioxide, which the plants love, and then they give us oxygen. And it's a really neat system the way it works out. Except they have all these trees that are dying. So what this class did is, excuse me, they contacted an arborist, you know, the tree experts, and talked to him about what is going on and what can be done. And what he told them is that there are some trees that are very resistant to this beetle and some of the other insects that get on the trees, and fungus and things like that. So they talked to their friends and neighbors, families. They did a GoFundMe page. They were able to purchase 80 trees. And they were, at least this big. So they're going to get really growing. And then they planted them. And then what happened is that they had a community-wide celebration of all the new trees in town. That really made a difference because they, as opposed to some people, are aware that we do have climate change and that it is affecting people and that the scientists are not stupid. They know that there are carbon emissions that are going up into the air due a lot because we have such a large human population these days that we're putting all this carbon into the air and it's really causing a problem. So these people, through their faith, planted the trees. And now they're much closer to God than just memorizing a whole bunch of doctrine or even memorizing scripture. They're living their faith. They know that faith without works is dead. Okay? And that's what they're doing. And so I challenge you in any way that you see a person, it can even be a member of your own family, that just needs a little help. Please, help them. Don't worry about what their ideas are or anything like that, because nobody can change anything but yourself when it comes to values and things like that. But if they need a little help, help them. If you have a spare sofa that somebody can sleep on, that you know personally, I don't ask you to invite somebody off the street, that can, just maybe for a short period of time, use it, be generous. Because Amos has told us how bad greed is. And we want to be people of abundance, of justice, and of sharing. Amen. Amen.